Everybody, it's Tyler here at the Northeast Wisconsin Signature event, checking in with 6219B Rock'em Sock'em Robot, currently ranked number 2 as we're on our final break before the end of quals. So looking really good so far. We talk about a lot of great stuff on this robot, starting out actually and how they're approaching some of their match strategy, including doing live scoring and making sure that they are always on top of things. I just watched their last match, and they had a huge upset in the match, and that was a big part of it as well, too. We're also going to be talking about, as we go through the robots, some of the great wire management doing. This is definitely one of the best packaged robots I've seen so far in high stakes. So we talk about that packaging, their wire management, that sort of thing, and then talking about more about their sensors and how they're implementing them in the robot. And one other thing I want you to focus on, they actually did attempt to do a tier 3 climb. You don't see it on the robot. We'll be talking more about why it didn't work and how they're maybe looking at implementing that in the future. So let's talk more about them coming up here on Pits and Parts. Jace, let's talk about matches a bit more. As I mentioned, we saw you had a huge match just earlier, and part of that, as we'll talk about match strategy, is also doing the live scoring in the match too. So talk to me more about that whole process.
Okay, so yeah, this season we kind of figured out that with all the moving parts and like being able to de-score mobile goals, it's really hard to like know what you have to do to win. So live scoring is kind of our solution to being able to solve that. So with live scoring, I will be sitting there scoring the match live and allowing us to change our game strategy how it goes. So if, like in our last match, the really big upset, we realized we were down by 1 point and either needed to de-score a mobile goal or score a wall stake. So we communicated with our teammates to have them come in behind us after we went to go for the negative score and then us go for the high stake, and we ended up getting both, and it has led to so many different matches, wins this season. It's made a huge difference. It's just it gives us such an advantage in matches, being able to communicate with our teammates and change our game strategy midway through instead of having to stick with one, which is how we've seen a lot of big upsets happen throughout the year.
Yeah, I mean, just listening to your communication throughout the match, you can definitely tell, like, man, your drivers are super informed through this, so getting that great info definitely made a huge difference for you. I got to ask you, this is your first signature event that your team has been to ever for things. How's your experience been so far coming to a signature event?
It's been great. I mean, this is honestly insane. This is so much cooler than like just a regular local event.
Yeah.
It's not quite on the level of Worlds, but it is definitely cool being able to see teams from out of the state and compete with some different competition than we normally see.
Especially here at the Northeast Wisconsin, you're at Lambeau Field, right? Could you really ask for much of a better venue for something like that? Really cool. Let's pass over to Jack, talk more about some stuff on this robot, but one of the things I'd love to hear about, this is definitely one of the best packaged robots, and your wire management is fantastic on here. So just walk me through just how you all put this together, and I'd also love to hear maybe advice you have for other teams who want to do such a great job in their packaging wire management.
Yeah, so for starting off with the wire management, a lot of the times we try and like hide it in C channel. So as soon as we can, we get it like in behind the C channel of our frame, because it means it's not getting in the way of other things. It just looks a lot better, and it just means that it just makes it easier to find things in the robot and get to things and unscrew things or add things on. So having the wires just tucked away behind the C channel in places that it's not getting in the way is just super helpful for that. With the pneumatics, a lot of the times we try and get the end of the solenoid as close to the piston or wherever it's acting as in as little space as possible to waste the least amount of air. And so just getting everything tucked behind with the wires makes it easier to get those in after the fact, and then get those really close so you don't waste a lot of air, and then you can also you can have those also really compact because you don't have to worry about trying to get wires in the mix too. So doing the wires as you go is a really helpful way to do that. Yeah.
And has it been like this throughout the entire season for you, or is this in this final iteration, is it kind of this nice packaged machine?
It's really been in this last robot we've really started doing this because with the last robot that we had, the wires were a mess and there was a sort of a rat nest in there. And it made it really hard to get things in there because we were trying to add tracking wheels, and we just couldn't even get anything in there. We had to take all of the wires out to put them back in, or to put them in the first place.
I think there's a factor of just being proud of your robot as well, too, a lot of times. And just, when judges come up and stuff, you just kind of have that little bit better presentation to give them as well. I do want to ask you, we were talking earlier that your team was actually looking at trying to do a Tier 3 climb as well. And as early as, or as late as last Sunday, you were still trying to attempt that. Can you just talk to me a little bit more about what you tried to do, maybe what didn't quite work out for you, and then if you have any future plans to maybe try to implement it?
So I'll just start with what we started. We started initially trying to mount it to the wall stake mechanism. That just wasn't working, simply because with the wall stake back here, there's not much supporting it side to side. So when you would be pulling down, this would all bend out, and it was really bad, or bend in. So that was really bad. So then we started, similar to the way 3004A has it mounted. There was another bar mounted here. And we got the hang part of that worked really well, and then we had the PTO and the drivetrain. That part really worked really well, but just the really hard part about it was getting the passive hooks to engage while also not hitting them on the way up. That was the problem. That was the hurdle that we were getting stuck in. So as you can see, like, we still have the passive hook parts on there. We tried to get them as close to the inside of the robot as possible because the further away the ones on the outside had to be, the less strong they were and the more likely they were to bend. But a lot of the weight, we were having problems with getting the weight forward because if the weight's all the way back, the robot would just tip back as it's moving, and then it wouldn't be able to pull itself forward. So having the weight, we had our pneumatics tanks up in the front to keep the weight up the front, because then it takes less to get it onto there. And so we were having problems with it getting there, so we still need to find a way to get our weight more forward.
Now, despite that happening, as we mentioned before, currently you're ranked number 2. So I think it's overall probably the right call so far to make, but do you think you'll continue to try to get a higher tier climb, especially with the rule changes as well too? Have you been incentivized to want to continue that?
Yes, we definitely want to continue it after the signature event. We still have it together, and we still have our CAD in our notebook, which has been super helpful, because having the CAD means we can rebuild it all. We can rebuild the whole thing. We can put it back on because we know exactly which holes in the C channel it was in, and we still have it built and all the stuff like that. So we're gonna definitely try moving the weight forward in the future, and try and make it faster. We still probably gonna try and get it under 15 seconds because the wall stake game is still an important part of the game at the end.
Well, wish you best of luck on trying to get that going as well too. Jack, I also want to ask other Jack here, ask in regards to some of the sensors you're using. I noticed you do have an odometry pod in there, but just talking about like a sensor overview of your robot and what you have.
Yeah, so on the bottom of our robot, we have a horizontal odometry pod, and what that allows us to do is track the position, especially with using all omnis, which is better for driver control. Having the odometry pod there helps us avoid like when we slide sideways, we can account for that. We use the internal motor encoders as the forward tracking wheel for odometry to save space. That was one thing coming off of a tier 3 hang. We couldn't fit one in the back here, and so we ended up not having to add one. But if we had more time, we would definitely add one just to give us that extra consistency. Moving up, on the back here, we have the inertial sensor to track rotation instead of a third tracking wheel. But then we also have 2 distance sensors that allow us to reset the odometry. So what they do is they calculate the difference between the 2 distances when facing a wall, and then we're able to turn so that we know that we're perpendicular to that wall. And then we can reset its position based on the average of the 2, which is the distance from the wall. And that allows us to reset each of its each X and Y position in odometry during our run. That's primarily in skills, and that allows us to ensure that once we do a part, even if we mess up in that, we reset and then we know where we are again and we can keep going perfectly. On the top, on our Lady Brown, we have a rotation sensor. We use PID and macros with that, so it automatically goes between the stow height, the load height, and then the score height, and that allows us to just a button press up instead of having to manually guide it up, manually guide it over. It's just so much easier in matches, especially with the 30 seconds rule change. There's a lot more wall stakes play, and it's very important to be able to do that quickly. In here, we also have a color sensor and a distance sensor for color sorting the rings, and that allows us to detect if we're red, if a blue ring comes through. We briefly reverse the intake when it's right here, so then the ring flies backwards instead of downwards onto the mobile goal. That gives us our speed to be able to claim a corner right as soon as possible, which is one of our biggest, one of the biggest ways to score points. And once we have that, then we can just
Rockin' Sock and Robots, by the way. Congratulations on a great performance here so far. We, of course, wish you best of luck throughout the rest of the competition here, and hope you do get that Tier 3 climb going as well. That'd be phenomenal to see, so we'll definitely check back in with you should you get that going. But a lot of great stuff still to learn for the wire management and package as well, too. A lot of great stuff that I think teams can be inspired by. So best of luck here. Good luck, and thanks a lot for taking the time. We appreciate it.